Hey there, internets. So, rather than a regular Saturday night rant, because there's just not lots of little things to talk about something that's kind of been more in the news, especially on the right. It's finally moved into the mainstream. That's the Ohio train derailment. And it kind of, in some ways, again, the left side of the political spectrum in the media, which is the most of the media, honestly, especially in their opinion stuff, goes and tries to make itself into a joke. Because this guy for the New York Times by the name of Stuart A. Thompson starts going on about how, look at all these conspiracy theories and people thinking about this and, talking wildly about it, making all this out to be what it is. Here's the problem. For Mr. Thompson, we have video and local reporting that shows dead fish in the water. You have a United States senator going into a creek, and how he managed to, why he would go out and close that nice to that creek, knowing what's there, starts scraping around in the water, and you got plumes of oily looking stuff coming up out of the creek bed. It is a serious issue. And this idiot, it says, since a train carrying hazardous materials derailed in Ohio nearly 2 weeks ago, residents have feared for their safety. Hey, let's be legitimate about this. I'm going to have, of course, as always, links in the description below. But I went and looked up about vinyl chloride. I just did a quick Google search and found, just to clarify, because I'd heard that it was, when you burned it, it could produce some of the same chemicals used as poison gas in World War II, and it can. It can form hydrogen chloride and phosphine gas. Both were used as chemical agents, as weapons in World War I. Excuse me, not World War II. And it's one of those that, that's a serious. They evacuated from within 1 mile of that thing when it happened, when they had this derailment. They had a controlled burn of toxic materials. Now, why they couldn't get that material off without having to burn it, I don't know. But it says, many commentators from across the political... It says, dead fish that floated nearby creeks, unnerving aroma lingered in the air. For many commentators from across the political spectrum, the speculation has gone far beyond known facts. Right-wing commentators have been particularly critical, using the crisis to sow distrust about government agencies and suggest that damage could be irreparable. Look, how often do we hear the left talk about in the environment, say, this is irreparable, we have to do something now? And now somebody on the right says, hey, this is a definite situation. Sorry, spilling hazardous materials into a creek, you're not going to get any, should have no debate on the political spectrum that that's bad. And is going to create a really serious situation. Irreparable? I don't know. On social media and Twitter and media like Twitter and Telegram, commentators have called the situation the largest environmental disaster in history. I think we're going to have to wait to see if that actually turns out to be the case, or simply Chernobyl 2.2, invoking the 1986 nuclear disaster. Well, when you're making an emergency evacuation of a large area, and I think one of the articles I'd heard referenced, I think it was Tim Pool, they said something to the effect of, it was just, you went there and it's like everyone's just suddenly up and left, which is what they finally did when they evacuated Chernobyl. That's why you see, plates still on tables and with the food, of course, missing. And they go back there and you see everything just like as it was left, with whatever weathering has happened, like broken windows and whatnot. They tried without evidence that vital water reservoirs serving states downriver could be badly contaminated. Could be, and going downstream, water flows downhill, dude. Have you ever not heard that thing about how to be a plumber? Paydays on water flows downhill. Paydays on Friday. Avoid finger foods at all costs. I'd avoid drinking that water if it were me. It is just that the authorities, railroad companies, and mainstream news media were purportedly obscuring the full toll of the crisis. Until I heard it on the right side, I didn't hear about it out here in Washington. honestly. It wasn't coming across my suggested newsfeed when I went online. That's where I initially get news, because it gives me a mix of left and right. I didn't hear about it, so I started hearing about it from people considered to be on the right. Tim Pool is not on the right, but he's thrown in with that because he's not woke. Some people are suggesting conspiracy theories, and I'm going to address that one in a little bit here, because some of the people are like, wow, look at all these disasters. But the Environmental Protection Agency has acknowledged the situation. They've said the air quality returned to safe levels. Well, that will probably be the first thing to return to safe levels. They've been allowed to return. That doesn't mean it's all better. But there's people can still smell it. And just because you don't have a problem now, water seeps down. Sometimes you don't see the effects till later. And of course, Norfolk Southern wouldn't show up for a town hall meeting about this either. But here's the point. It's not conspiracy theories when you got video from the locations. Snopes has even said, and I will include a link to them, this is one of those where you consider the source, are videos of dead fish near Ohio train derailment real? And they say true, and then they go into it. Because if it's lethal to fish, it's probably lethal to other life in sufficient quantities. Now, that water, once filtered and cleaned through like a normal system, might be safe to drink. But they're going to really have to treat it and filter it. And it's still not a good situation. If your dog drinks out of that creek that's got dead fish in it, probably not real good for the dog. I mean, it's just, all that stuff is much worse for fish. It's when I get the fish tank set back up here, which will be visible in my phone's camera, eventually a real camera. I'm gonna have to treat that water, because what's safe for me to drink ain't safe for the fish. But that should be an indicator that there's something going on there. That's why people put filtration systems on their house sometimes for the water they drink, or they filter their water through like a Brita water pitcher. So just think about that for a minute. And Norfolk Southern has apparently reported a rise in accidents in the few years before their train derailment. According to Axios, the executives reported a rise in accident rates in recent years, just weeks before the derailment in Ohio forced the company to vent and burn carcinogenic chemicals, according to the New York Times. The big picture, the rate of accidents on the company's railway increased each of the last 4 years. The CEO told shareholders the service was at its best it had been in more than 2 years. I'm wondering if he's telling his shareholders a line, or if he's taking into other account other things. So here's the thing: is everyone's talking about this, but there's a couple of contexts here. A big context. Pete Buttigieg, who has been MIA on multiple transportation issues in the last 6 months, he said, "Oh, there's 1,000 train derailments a year." Well, that much I looked up. PolitiFact says that is true. They get about 1,000 a year, 1,700 derailments. But what qualifies as a derailment is just the train being off the track, a single car. Most of them happen in a rail yard. You're moving cars around. In this particular case, apparently one of the wheels, the bearings, seized and caused the whole thing to jump. But you'll hear me say this, and it's absolutely true, that in the United States, you can make a massive astronomical number, or one that sounds astronomical and don't mean anything. We have the largest rail network in the world. According to PolitiFact, in 2021, there was 1,627 train accidents involving both passengers and cargo trains. And they give a chart showing the numbers of accidents, and they've dropped, but they really dropped around from up around 8,000 in 1980, 85 down to 32, almost 3,300, and it's hovered. In 2000 there was 3,000. In 2021, 1,627, and you can actually put your mouse on the year you want to track injuries and whatnot. The peak for injuries was 2002 with almost 1,900 injuries. Fatalities, very, very low, 4, 9. So we had, get on off the injury line here. I know I don't want the injury line. Anyway, when you get into there, 8 fatalities in 2021. So it's some of it's very, very minuscule in reality, but we hear about it so much. And if you're hearing about news happening in Ohio and you hear, oh, there's 3 train derailments, there's a couple 3 train derailments daily on average. But it could be that maybe you're just moving cars around, and the article described in PolitiFact compares it to a fender bender with your car. Where is it? In this PolitiFact article, I don't want to read the whole PolitiFact article to you because I don't want to go just drone on and on and on. But 1990, 2021, there was... Okay, in 2021, of the train accidents, almost 1,100 were derailments. And this is further down, just above the... about maybe halfway through the article. I do encourage you to read it. It will be linked in the description below. That's Bureau of Transportation Statistics. I did not dig further into it, but you're welcome to. It does have a link. That amount is averaged to about 90 derailments per month, 3 derailments per day. Not a shocker. They're just not catastrophic. This was an epically bad derailment. That's the ones we typically are going to hear about. If you have a derailment and it causes more than, where it says main derailments result in relatively minor damage, it says most derailments don't become national news because they don't involve death, injury, or hazardous substances. The Federal Railroad Administration requires derailment be reported if it causes more than $1,200 of damage to the track or equipment, said Alan, apologize to this guy if I mispronounce his name, Zaremski, director of the University of Delaware's Railway Engineering and Safety Program. It doesn't take a lot to get to $12,000 worth of damage to a locomotive or to a piece of track or even a freight car. That $1,200 threshold equates to a couple $100 of damage to your car. And if you think about it, I was backing up a delivery truck a couple of years ago, hit a bumper. Just a bumper on a car. That's all that was damaged. It was like a $1,200 or a couple $1,000 bumper. So if just damaging a bumper costs $1,200, what does it do when you have a piece of rail car get damaged? Not even a major one. We had a derailment here in Mount Vernon in the last month or so. And I only knew about it because the local Facebook page that tells you what's going on right now let it be known that there's derailment. There's train blocking the tracks. One car jumped the track. I drove by a couple weeks later, and they had cranes out there, and they were replacing part of the whole undercarriage of that one tanker car. You can't tell me that that's not going to cost a lot of money to fix. How many dollars an hour for those couple of cranes they got lifting the one end of that car? It's going to cost a lot of money. A tow truck that can pull out a big truck. I remember getting a truck stuck in mud. $350 an hour. That adds up. So I can easily see where $12,000 is easily reached to get to that $1,100, but that's not much. We had a bearing go out jumped the track. One car didn't even tip over. But by the time we get the track cleared, get that one car out of the way, and get it fixed, easily $12,000. And it's going to appear on that. So last year, and this is why I bring this up. Last year, there was some high-profile warehouse fires. A onion processor burned down, and a plane crashed onto the a small plane crashed onto the property of another kind of food processor, and it ended up with this list coming across the internet saying, look at all these food processors that are going out. And it was, an avian flu outbreak at this chicken farm. So I looked into a few of them. The plane that crashed, it said crashed into and destroyed a warehouse house. No, it was a plane that crashed into the back 40 and damaged a couple of trailers. The pilot might have been trying to commit suicide. Didn't even hit the building. Onion processor burned down. Yeah, onion processor had a fire, burned down during their off season. They never even missed a beat. They moved into a new building, started up operations. Those things happen. A lot of what they report is warehouse fires were nothing but, we had a small fire break out in the building because some chemicals soaked some rags and spontaneously combusted. Very minor things, but people were blowing it up to be, look at these destroyed food warehouses and food processors. It wasn't nearly as epic, and people forget. Country of I think the third largest country by land area, third or fourth largest country, and I think the third largest country by population. You have thousands of food processors. Likewise, with as much rail yard as we have, in this article, it says the fender bend. They're the fender benders of the railroad world. He said yard derailments are typically low speed, low energy derailments that cause somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 of damage. Totally believable for that one car here in Mount Vernon. A derailment that caused $100,000 in damage would be considered a fairly big derailment. That's probably where they're off the track on their side. He had a typical locomotive costs $3 to $4 million. And that derailment probably caused millions. And it gives us somewhere in here, the U.S. freight rail system comprises 140,000 miles and is considered one of the world's largest, according to the Federal Railroad Administration. 140,000 miles, that's going to circle the globe almost 6 times for perspective. Okay, that's a huge rail line. So to have something get that blown out of this is rail derailments happen, but when you hear about there was 2 in South Carolina within the same week, not that big a deal. There was one in Houston that a week before, or a couple days before, or after. Not a big deal, because you're going to have 3 or 4 derailments a day somewhere in this country. But a lot of them are going to be very minor things. So keep that in mind in that. Yes, this is bad. Epically bad. But this is not something to be concerned about, thinking a conspiracy about. If there's anything, it's the not talking about it and the fact that this is the kind of thing you would think FEMA would be saying, yes, there's funds because you guys can't go back to your homes for a week. My house wasn't destroyed by flood, but FEMA still came in to Skagit County a couple of years ago. I never saw any money because I had flood insurance. I never saw any FEMA money, but they had options. Excuse me, hiccups all at once. I had 16 inches of water in here, but FEMA still came in. So why is FEMA not really getting itself involved? And we should be, and certainly, White House is finally speaking about it. If anything, it speaks to the ineptitude of the Biden administration that they couldn't address it publicly when they were being asked about it. if there's something to really be concerned about, why were they not saying anything about something that was obviously a disaster and going on? Probably it's going to be one of the more historically notable train wrecks that we've seen because of the scope of it. So, big thing about, oh, look at all the derailments. That's a nothing burger. The size of this particular one and the attitude of some of the media and the attitude of the Biden administration prior to being called out repeatedly, that is far more concerning. So that's kind of what I have for you in my little rant about this. There are things sometimes that to be concerned about and say, what's going on here? As far as the number of derailments, nothing. Unless you say that we should have almost no derailments, but that's probably a tall order in the size of our own our country and our rail system. Having a total total accidents of 1,627, and remember that it's including, some dumbass parked his truck on a crossing. I think that was one of the ones that people were looking at, saying, "Oh, look at how this happened." Yeah, someone parked their truck on a railroad crossing, no gates. Train hits it because they're not paying attention to what's going on, or they should have waited to cross. Of course, because the train can't stop. Very minor things get counted in that. So don't get near as overly concerned about the numbers. If it was going back substantially up, like to 2004 numbers, or even halfway to 2004 numbers, I'd be worried. Because 2004 numbers was 1,385 accidents. I don't know how many derailments out of that. So, when people say, look at how terrible the system is, it's not as bad as you think. But the response to this one, yeah, that's garbage. Anyway, until next time, I'm looking at some other stuff. I don't know if it's going to be as much of a thing as I originally thought. If it is, it's going to be a special video later this week because I want to read a Biden administration proposed rule before I comment. Until then, you all take care.